Monolith is missing. Not exactly Mario is missing, but close enough.
The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
It's not every day that Monolith is in the project area. As a matter of fact, it's not very many days that Monolith is ever in the project area. But it's time for a wild, wild exception. There are two ugly realities that you have to deal with when it comes to technology. The silent march of time and the silent march of technology. Monolith is a 5-year-old system now. Doesn't feel like that long ago when I first built this thing in the summer of 2016. We're pretty much at the end of the summer into the fall of 2021 now. And the thing with this machine is it's run so well. Blue screens have been events if they ever happen at all. A little bit of wear and tear on the brushed aluminum, and it kind of looks pretty cool in the new dark mode theme that I've been using since the new decade began. But it's been a while since I've done any kind of cleaning with this thing. It's very easy to clean too. You can just pull out the dust filter and clean it off anytime you want. But we gotta go in with the cleaning putty and all the hardcore stuff today. Plus, for the first time in a long time, we have some upgrades to install. Ugh, look at those dust bunnies. You can see them through the dust filters as well. We're gonna need the air cans for this one. Oh man, oh man. And I wasn't even running them at minimum speed either. I had a little bit of speed on the fan in the back. Monolith, for those of you that are new to this machine, was supposed to be essentially the last computer I ever built, but there's a new fractal design case out now called the Define 7 XL. I think my next case will tower over even this beast. I like the whole blue Darth Vader look to the Define R5, though. It's just there was no Define R5 XL available back when I built this thing. I don't know when I'm building another system. We do have Windows 11 coming out, and we're into the twilight years of Windows 10. But at the very same time, there's nothing wrong with this system. So Windows 11 is really the only reason for me to upgrade right now. I haven't hit the limits on the CPU, a Skylake 6700K, and I haven't hit the limits on the GPU, an RTX 2060, up from the 1060 that I built this thing with. So overall, it's just, yeah, we just gotta get through all these darn part shortages, which supposedly is gonna take about another year or so for the semiconductor industry to get over the manufacturing disruptions of the COVID lockdowns. But as it stands, this thing, believe it or not, is a 5-year-old computer, but you'd never know it from how it runs Elder Scrolls Online maxed out, and still has plenty of punch to throw around in the hardware department. In a sense, I'm getting, with Monolith, what I would have gotten had I built a Sandy Bridge in the early 2010s, instead of a 1090T system on the AMD side. Okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1. Yikes. And this is why I call cases that have the power supply on the bottom dust suckers. This thing's washable though. Now what about this thing? Well, some of the dust made it through the fans, so we got rings and crap, but yeah, wash them in the sink and dry it out while working on the rest of the video, and get over here with some cleaning putty and some air cans. Ah, this ratty old 15-plus-year-old air conditioner. I just pop it in the window when needed. It's the end of September and I'm running AC. Just like most of the summer, not for the temperature, but to drop the darn humidity. This is probably a record for the most time I've ever spent using an air conditioner as a dehumidifier over the span of a summer. Whatever. Well, anyways, yeah, the humidity's supposed to be done for good now, but until it actually dries out, I'm thinking one more night with this old dinosaur in the window. Okay, isopropyl alcohol, bunch of air cans, some cleaning putty, everything we need to clean this darn thing out. A little bit of scrubby-dubby for Monolith, huh? Except, well, I suppose since it's the 2020s, I could probably throw in one more thing. It would be nice if I didn't end up sneezing from all the dust. Now, the reason for the masks. Yeah, you can already see some dust bunnies flying around. I don't think the camera's going to pick that up, though. Alright, that's as much as we can do with that. Let's bring in the cleaning putty and see how it does. Oh, is that a bug flying around or a dust bunny? I can't tell. It's way up in the air and hopefully it never lands. This stuff is goopier and slimier than the stuff I used to get back in the day. It's interesting, though, that cleaning putty is a thing with electronics, because if you were a bratty kid, you got grounded once for pressing silly putty into a carpet. This cleans stuff in the exact same way. You press it into stuff and everything sticks to it, and it can't get out. Basically the opposite of when you press silly putty into the carpet. You press the silly putty into the carpet, and your parents couldn't get it out, and you got grounded. Are you speaking from experience, Mr. J? I plead the fifth, Your Honor. Hey, by the way, these fans are Fractal Design Venturis, so could always swap them out for some Noctuas to get the Noctua fanboys all happy and be like, ooh, he finally got Noctuas. But I'm actually using them for the CPU fan, so yeah, I know. I'm gonna do whatever I can do on camera, and then do the rest, and when I can actually have both hands. Something worth noting, though, look at the, you know how I've had doors always breaking off on these and things, stuff like that. Screws on the little door in the case. Definitely one of the things I've liked about Monolith the most. And if anyone's wondering why I have a fan controller with manual fan control when motherboards can do that, it's basically so I can run the system with the fans turned all the way down and nothing overheats. It's basically a matter of how much noise I want. If I feel like something's going to overheat, just crank everything back up. This machine uses 140mm fans, so even when I crank everything up, it's a nice low hum. You know, very relaxing. It's not like the whirry old hair dryers of yore. Sorry, I'm having flashbacks to a friend I had in college who built a computer with 60mm case fans in his case. Yeah, he had a case. You could buy cases back then with 60mm case fans. And he was coming from a system that was water-cooled. Yeah! It was quite a shocker for him when everything always ran hot and the thing always made too much noise. College. Some of the learning, pro tip, some of the learning that you do in college is because you're an idiot with no experience. And you gotta get your experience somewhere. Oh, I would make such a terrible comedian. I laugh at my own jokes way too much. What's that on the door? More dust? Put the putty to it. Whatever.
As part of the wonderful engineering of this case, we have these side vents to keep the case quiet.
Yeah, and attract more dust bunnies that you have to use some cleaning putty to clean out. Let's get the other side. Oh, look, another dust bunny just fell and it got caught on camera. Yeah, it's been a while for this darn thing. I'm telling you, if you could have told bratty little kid me that the same thing that gets you in trouble for pressing silly putty into the carpet would be used to clean stuff years down the road, I don't know what I would have thought. Ugh, get it in there. Some of it's disappearing. You need two hands, though. I don't want to push the computer off the desk. I cheated with the air can. Oh well. I don't know though. It's not doing much for that honeycomb right there. I suppose. Yeah. Well, that's why this stuff exists. Whoa! Like new. Yeah, that's why this stuff. Nobody should have a computer without some of this stuff sitting around somewhere. We could even clean out the USB ports if we really want to, but do those ever get dirty? I don't know. Yeah. Nobody should do anything with a computer without having some of this stuff around. That's about as clean as it's going to get without busting it open. So next up, we bust it open. These little pantry organizer thingies are a Geek House 5S thing around here, but they're actually pretty good for leaving some extra screws in when you pop open a case. Well, the mask has now been justified. We sure whipped up quite a bit of dust, blowing the dust out of the back of the intake fans. Primary purpose of the intake fans is to facilitate airflow over the drives and cool them off directly that way. I'm thinking of replacing them with more pressure fans and whatnot, because as you can see, they have to blow through a lot of stuff. So I don't know if high airflow is really the best thing to do. Pressure fans are usually for blowing through a heatsink. There's a lot of obstructions in the way though, so perhaps the static pressure would be a good way to run the drives a little cooler. And it's also why these little 2.5 things in the back don't get used. I actually had an SSD start cooking in here once, almost. So yeah, a little bit too warm when there's no airflow in the back of the case. Rather put him directly in the line of fire of the intake fans, and look at that dust. Oh yeah, we sure blew up a lot of dust trying to clean the back of the fans. Now, the reason we're here is I'm getting over it. So, for the past couple of years, I've taken a hint from the wonderful world. I've taken a little hint from the wonderful world of Office desktops, which went to 2.5-inch drives before they went to SSDs. So the thing with 2.5-inch drives is they use less power, but they're also slower for the most part. I upgraded my games drive to a Seagate 2 terabyte, and I found it spins up faster and doesn't really impact the power as much as an old hard drive would have maybe 5 or 10 years ago. The truth of the matter is that for the hard drive industry, the remaining hard drive manufacturers have had to adjust as SSDs carved out their niche. So today's hard drives are going to be nothing like the hard drives of yesteryear. And at $50 for 2 terabytes versus, I remember, $70 for a terabyte before the Thailand floods many, many years ago, it's actually a good time to buy storage. It's one of the few types of drives out there, or one of the few types of computer parts that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. Or maybe my perspective is skewed because I remember what the Thailand floods did to hard drive prices. But hey, the Thailand floods are one of the reasons why I started using SSDs. A little paradox. Make the cheap stuff expensive, and suddenly the expensive stuff feels cheaper. And so you want to try it out when you otherwise wouldn't. So we're going to be upgrading the data array, these two 2.5 drives, to 2 terabyte 3.5 drives. I hope it doesn't impact the power usage of the computer too much. We will be drawing from the 12-volt rail, but hey, you know, a lot of power efficiency comes from the power supply these days. Watt range and the efficiency rating. And also not having a power supply that's way too big for your system when you might someday run 2 graphics cards and need like 800 watts or something. Whatever. OEM packaging for these Barracudas. Well, we'll see how well the OEM packaging works. And here's the old Hitachi Global Storage. I was actually using, because it was for data only, I was actually doing 5400 RPM. Only 700 milliamps off of the 5-volt line, so if you multiply 5 volts times 0.7, that's the wattage this thing contributed. So that's really it. Ohm's law. Power equals volts times amps. So 0.7 for 700 milliamps. And that was one of the reasons why I went to 2.5 drives in the first place. But I think we're splitting hairs with the wattage, even if we get the 12-volt rail involved. But yeah, 22 of January 2015. So this thing's over 5 years old. It's about time something newer went in. Just for safety's sake, though, we're going to hold on to these with the data still on them and probably put them in enclosures and things like that. Got one sitting around, and we'll just keep it around for a while with the data still on it until we're ready to blank these and use them for something else. Seagate Barracuda Compute, we look at the specifications for the electrical side of it. We're only talking like point-something amps on the current side and then some extra volts over on the other side. So, yeah, really, it's just, you know, you really want to split hairs over wattage in order to get fast spin up, spin down, fast data transfer, or, you know, fast other stuff. I think the array will do just fine with 3.5 drives instead of 2s. Okay, there we go. Drive is in. Now, let's run this thing as a vertical test bench while we copy over all the data and see how well it works with everything, with the cover off and everything. Oh man, hope the temperatures don't get too crazy. Let's just make sure that we put all the, yep, I'm going to adjust all the fans to minimum speed because they're barely going to do anything while the cover's off. Let's see how hot it gets. It helps if you turn it on.
Epic fail.
It also helps if you plug it in. We still have the laptop power block plugged in from last time. I'm a bit concerned though about that cooler that's kind of hanging like that. It's kind of bending the motherboard. That's probably the kiss of death for this machine at some point. There we go. We get a beep? Alright, let's see how confused it is because none of the hardware is here that it usually has. Oh, what is this? No keyboard detected. Keyboard errors already. Yeah, well, it's going from a mechanical keyboard back to a insane membrane keyboard, so you really can't blame it for complaining. Or, it could also be the case that I plugged in the speakers instead of the keyboard, as I got my chords mixed up. Whatever.
Epic fail.
Ready for some Monolith in action? Here's the noise difference. The CPU is controlled by the motherboard, though. Nice deep hum. 140 millimeters. Relaxing. And it doesn't sound like a hairdryer. Chair creaks a little, though. Promising numbers on the kilowatt so far. This thing's hanging around 40 watts when it just started up and there's still background processes running. So nice to see I'm seeing a 40 watt cap when I start the machine up, even though I've replaced a 2.5 drive with a 3.5 drive. It's way better numbers than the machines of yore. And they're horrendous, like won't go below 100 watts type thing. And the glare is coming from somewhere else. Alright, let's get to work on this thing. Ooh, 51 watts spike there. I just found out the hard way that I've had these drives reversed the whole time they've been in this computer. Whoops! So it was the extra drive that we just put in, but the extra drive is actually on the bottom. The way it goes is I put the most important drives on the bottom so that the heat that rises off of them will affect the drives above them. So more important ones are on the bottom, so the extra drive should actually be higher than the data drive, because it's only used to back things up. Oops! It's not going to matter anyways. We're going to copy the near 1 terabyte of data off of the 2.5 drive at a abysmally slow speed probably onto this 2 terabyte drive, and then we shall rename it to the new data drive and put the new one in as the new extra drive before copying everything back. But first, brand new drive, a little Crystal Disk Mark Shizuku edition. Let's see what it gets for numbers. I don't know. A newer Fractal design case would actually not have the blue LEDs on it. So, I don't know, maybe I should stick with this one. Either way, what do we have here? So, I remember when hard drives couldn't handle more than 100 sequential max transfer speed. 220s now. I'm sure that'll slow down once there's data on it. Let's see what happens when we transfer nearly a terabyte of data over, because that's the reason why we're doing this. We're doing this to expand the data storage on this thing. I finally decided to cave and go over to 2 terabytes. It took me about 10 years or so to approach filling up a 1 terabyte drive. We'll see when I can fill up 2 terabytes. Probably faster in today's world where there's more data. And just like that, it's the next evening. I knew this would take a while. We're talking mechanical drives here, and it was an absolute slogfest at about 100-something megs per second maximum transfer speed. But now that we have the new drive set up, I reran the Crystal Disk Mark, and it's still above 200 on the reads anyways. So it's a mechanical drive. There's only so much that these companies can do with this stuff. So anyways, let's get the other drive in there. I know that's going to take a while, but hopefully the transfer speed is faster now that it's coming off of a 3.5 drive instead of a 2.5 drive. So what we'll do is, because the drives were all wrong and whatnot, we're going to make them right this time. So that's actually going to become the new data drive. The old data drive will come out, and then what goes in will be the new extra drive. A little bit of drive swapping, but it'll put the more important drives towards the bottom. I don't know if the heat really makes much of a difference, though, if I have fans blowing over them all the time. And I'm thinking of replacing those Fractal Venturis with some Noctuas that do static pressure from the Noctua Redux series. and see what we get in terms of airflow differences and temperatures. Because when you're blowing through something like this, it may not be a radiator, but hey, some static pressure could probably come in handy. Oh man, this really shows just how much I was splitting hairs to make this system more power efficient. Look at that. Yeah, so 5 volts at 800 milliamps for the 7200 RPM version of this, versus 5 volts at 700 milliamps for the 5400 RPM slower extra drive that I was using. Oh man, it's just crazy how much I was splitting hairs for, what, a few less watts? Putting different fans in the system can make more of a difference than that. Or just running them at a slower speed, like I often do. So, I mean, I can make the wattage just go up and down a little just by turning up the fan speed. We're in the 40s right now because some of the drives are still spinning. But after about a half hour, when the drives we're not using turn off, then it'll drop down a little lower. But I think a more efficient processor, like with a 65 watt TDP, would do more, like a Ryzen 5700 Golf or something. Yeah, so yeah, 700 to 800 milliamps. I really did split hairs a couple of years ago at the expense of spin-up times and performance and stuff along those lines. And seriously, I was just... The real way to make a computer more power efficient nowadays is to just not have mechanical drives at all and go all SSD. I think the next time that I'm taking a look at something like this, 2.5-inch SSDs will probably be cheap enough to do that at the 2 terabyte level. Right now it's the 1 terabyte 2.5-inch SSDs that you can catch on sale at a decent cost, but removing the remaining moving parts would be a heck of a lot of fun. But then I wonder how much cheaper hard drives would be when that happened. Because there's a certain point in which hard drives will no longer be economically viable to manufacture, but I don't think we're anywhere close to hitting that yet. There we go, all 3.5 drives in there now, no more 2.5 drives. And the wattage, when nothing exciting is happening, has gone to the mid-40s as opposed to the low 40s. So this really illustrates just how splitting hairs on watts is basically splitting hairs. You're better off just getting a newer processor with newer technology and a lower TDP and whatnot that has been essentially become more efficient because of the improvement of the technology. That's really what it boils down to. And of course, not having all kinds of storage devices probably helps too. But you're talking about a situation where probably the bulk of the wattage that your system guzzles when it's full blast or not doing very much is more dependent upon your processor, your graphics card, and your power supply's efficiency rating. So yeah, something worth noting. Especially when you consider what the mobile world is doing right now, especially that new laptop I have that has plenty of punch for non-gaming computing and is way lower than this. This is why I'm such a huge fan of haha hippie computers. And here we go, slogging away at 100-something and sometimes 200-something megs per second. Let's just do some stuff while the final transfer is taking place. There we go. All the new stuff is in the machine, and it's all back together, and I just wanted to get a nice shot of the beauty of simplicity that is Monolith. You know, today's gaming PCs are like a light show unto themselves. They've got like the 3 glowy fans, and there's RGB everywhere, and there's like glass on the side of the case. It's just like, you know, it's cool to have a nice light show, but eventually you get over it and you kind of want to just do stuff on the computer, so I don't see the point. And that's why I keep things nice and simple, because there's beauty in simplicity, even if we're talking about a Darth Vader style computer like this. But hey, it works. It's been working for 5 years. Works really, really well. There's beauty in simplicity, even if people love having computers double as light sources these days. I don't know. Some people have to turn to the dark side. So now that Monolith's all set, there's a few other odds and ends that I want to wrap up before we move on with things. You've probably, of course, seen this putting keycaps thing here for quite a few videos now. What am I doing with a bunch of HyperX keycaps? Well, it's simple. I decided to change out the keycaps on the mechanical keyboard. Something you could do with mechanical keyboards. Things start getting a little worn, just swap them out and have your keyboard feel like a brand new keyboard again. Sometimes a little too much like a brand new keyboard. It's kind of cool getting used to all these neat new things that mechanical keyboards bring to the table. These are pudding keycaps, so they're actually made to show more of whatever you have set for your lighting and stuff like that. And if I do function and the keys in the middle, you can actually change the colors. We got this as well, and it's more visible. It's actually more visible with this kind of stuff. Yeah, here's rainbow mode, or 80s Atari mode, depending on, you know, where you're familiar with this pattern from. But I'll just leave it on blue because blue's my color. But yeah, so that's pretty awesome. The fact that, you know, used to be, you had an old keyboard, it was getting worn out, time for a new keyboard. Not so with replaceable keycaps. Actually, there are typewriter-style keycaps too, so instead of spending $100+ on one of those typewriter-style retro keyboards, I can just swap out the keycaps. Just keep the keycaps in a place where you can find them, and get a key puller. Speaking of which, I've had these pantry containers from Walmart for a while now. What am I going to do with these? Well, the old keycaps didn't quite fit in the 5S containers, so I wanted to see if they'd fit in one of these. Just hard to eyeball which of these is bigger. Let's see if we can get these to fit in one of these and see which one we end up using. Yeah, thought so. I eyeballed correctly. Storing keycaps kind of reminds me of storing the pieces in a board game, though. They make kind of the same noise. But we are talking little plastic things here anyways. So yeah, I'm holding on to the old keycaps in case by wild chance I just want to change back to the original style, which was actually a little darker than pudding keycaps. I don't know, but it's cool to know these pantry containers can hold a full set of keycaps, so if I want to swap them out for stylistic reasons, like switching between normal, pudding, and typewriter, I have that option with these pantry containers. Nice 5S solution, especially if you put a label on it to say what they all are. Speaking of which, I gotta wonder about those batteries in the label maker. They've been in there for years, so I don't know. Not a good sign. Not a good thing to leave AAAs in there for a couple of years without barely making any labels. And just like that, Monolith is back in its place. The silent aging of technology. It truly is hard to believe that Monolith is a 5-year-old system. But it is. And it's still humming along with its little flickery light. Just like it's been doing for the last 5+ years. As the world of YouTubing in the 2010s gave way to YouTubing and streaming in the 2020s. Just gotta figure out what to do about Windows 11 now. This is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.